Coming up on this episode, the latest on a number of key Warrior players, including Klay Thompson, Gary Payton II, and Kevon Looney, plus a look at potential trade and free agency targets for the Warriors as the time for player movement inches ever closer. Yes, welcome back to the Golden State with Mates podcast. Been a while between episodes, and that is largely because 8 days ago now, last Saturday, my time here, I broke my collarbone. So just trying to recover from that, essentially, even as I'm sitting here right now. It's incredibly sore. I've got surgery coming up this week sometime in the coming days, so not really looking forward to that, but fingers crossed all goes okay, and this is why you don't play sport at a club level. I really should just be hanging out, playing social sport with friends, but I had a mate of mine who got me up for a game of Aussie rules football, first real serious game for 9 years since I was 18 years old, and lasted 5 minutes. Well, actually a bit longer than that. I lasted the first quarter, which is 20 minutes, and that's because I played the last 15 minutes of the first quarter with the broken collarbone. I spent the whole week essentially just telling myself, you got to prepare for body contact. And I'm sure some of you in America, like if you've gone a while without playing, gridiron or NFL or whatever seriously, it's hard to get back into the swing of just that physical body contact that, you really need to go through week in, week out to get used to it. And when you've gone 9 years without getting tackled and bumped and whatever else, it's going to obviously take a while to get back into, and my body just simply couldn't prepare for it as much as I was telling myself leading into it that, you got to be ready for it. I just wasn't. So came 5 minutes in. I took a mark and had a kick in the first couple of minutes. So I thought, yep, cool, we're on here. And then first real physical contest, I put my hands up to grab the ball, got hip and shoulder or bumped on my left-hand side. And again, not preparing for the body contact, not preparing for how to land as well, which I think is an underrated skill when it comes to sport, like obviously knowing how to land. And again, you go 9 years without playing a physical contact sport, you lose the ability to be able to do that. And I still had the ball in my hands, and I just absolutely landed like a thud on the ground. And knew something was wrong straight away, but have never really injured my shoulder or collarbone or anything like that. So try to play through it. I typical kind of guy mentality where you're playing first game for a new club and you don't want to come off the ground injured within the first 5 minutes. That was basically the only thing I was going to say. I don't want to be that guy who comes off injured. So lasted the rest of the first quarter. It's the first time I've ever played sport where I didn't want the ball to come my way in any way, shape, or form, and it did a few times, and it was horrific. Absolutely, I just wanted no contact whatsoever. And it's hard because, again, a physical sport, the last thing you want to do is look like the guy who shirks a contest, who doesn't want the physical contact, who doesn't embrace that. And it's hard to find a balance in, trying not to be that guy while also trying to protect yourself, knowing something's seriously wrong with your collarbone. And unfortunately that's the end result of it. So hopefully, fingers crossed, the surgeon can get a plate in there this week and things can all get back to normal fairly quickly. But other than that, we'll move on to NBA basketball and the Golden State Warriors. In fact, before that, we've obviously got the NBA finals at the moment. Sorry, I just have to take a second now. I'm like this sitting here really hurts. So if you guys are watching on YouTube, if I grimace at any point or if I take a couple of seconds, just know it's because I'm in a bit of pain going through here. Pain relief and Panadol and stuff at the moment is my best friend. So anyway, NBA Finals on at the moment. Celtics had a really strong win, obviously, in Game 1 over the Mavericks. My hot take here is I think the Mavericks will still win. I think the way that the Celtics were obviously able to guard Dallas in that Game 1 was absolutely superb. Just the switchability, the fact that they were able to kind of cope with switches with Al Horford guarding Luka. I thought the way that Minnesota defended was obviously so much different in terms of doubling Luka a lot. And Daniel Gaff and Derek Lively II were able to eat off that. PJ Washington, Derek Jones Jr. too. And I think the way that the Celtics are set up here to be able to take those guys away, and Luka's going to have his points, and I think he's going to have multiple games here of 35 plus points. But the Celtics are certainly better sorted, better equipped to be able to handle what Dallas are going to throw at them offensively. I just think I'm just absolutely in awe of what Luka's been able to do in this playoff run so far. Kyrie's going to be got to be a whole lot better moving forward than he was in game one. I just think they might figure it out. I think Jason Kidd's a good head coach. I think they'll figure it out. And I'm still you look at that Tatum performance in game one, and I suppose the optimistic glass half full approach would be that, he played so badly and yet the Celtics won fairly easily. And that's a good sign for the Celtics. I'm concerned. I'm concerned about that Tatum performance. And I don't know. I just, for some reason, most people are thinking, Celtics in 5, Celtics in 6. I'm hoping after what we got in the conference finals, I'm hoping that we get a deep series. I'm hoping that, we get a game 7 for the first time since 2016. And I might take the Mavericks because I just think if it's a one-off game 7, Luka's just a bad man. He's a bad man, and he could get it done. So obviously an outside tip, hot take, but yeah, I'm just going to back the Mavericks to get it done. Anyway, we'll get on to Warriors basketball. I just wanted to go through the latest Warriors plus minus podcast with the guys at The Athletic, Anthony Slater, Tim Kawakami, Marcus Thompson. They had a lot of good bits in here about updates on a number of key Warrior players whose futures are obviously up in the air in the coming weeks. And I just wanted to get into a little bit of that. You probably heard or read most of the stuff that's come from it, but I just wanted to give my kind of personal opinion on these things. So let's start with Klay, who's obviously the biggest one. Marcus Thompson quoted, "I don't think it looks good for him coming back," which is obviously, really disappointing. And it's obviously going to be a situation here of how far are the Warriors willing to extend in terms of how much they're willing to pay Klay. Is it going to be $30 million a season? He's obviously going to have his suitors. We spoke about it at length. The Orlando Magic probably lead that. But what happens with Klay is probably also going to be determined on what happens with a number of other key free agents. A team like Orlando is probably going to have Paul George, Malik Monk. Same with the Philadelphia 76ers. They're going to have George and others ahead of Klay in terms of their free agency wish list. And it just depends on what happens with those guys as to what happens with Klay. And, we saw last offseason, we saw Draymond. Obviously, he got re-signed within the first second of free agency, essentially. I don't think that's going to be the case with Klay. I think this might be something that maybe lasts a couple of days and just wait and see what happens with those other free agents, because Klay's going to be patient here. I think he's going to want to try and maximize his dollar value as much as he can, which is his prerogative. That's his right, and that's fair enough. But at the end of the day, he's also got to try and balance that with his legacy at the Warriors, the potential of him being a one franchise player for his career. And I think at some point, you've also got to believe and hope that he will take a bit of a discount to remain with the Warriors. But I've said all along that this is going to probably be a higher number than what I think most people. I think some people think they can get Klay at 2 years 40 or something, $20 million or less. I believe it would probably be something. I think it will be upwards of 25 million a year. I think 2 year 50 might be the absolute low mark. And if the Warriors can get Klay for anything less than that, I think that's an absolute steal. Not based on the value necessarily of Klay, because I think his value as a player might be less, well less than $25 million. But just in terms of the interest that, teams with cap space like the Magic and 76ers are going to have, where they could potentially throw upwards of $30+ million at Klay. At the end of the day, your value is based on what the market is willing to pay. And those, couple of teams, a young team like the Magic could throw big money to try and blow the Warriors out of the water. So if they could get Klay anything less than 2 years 50, 25 million a season, I think that'd be a steal. I think it'd be more like somewhere between 25 and 30. But we'll wait and see on that one. A couple of more interesting updates from the guys at The Athletic. Gary Payton II, first and foremost. So he's obviously got his $9.1 million player option. Spoke at his exit interview about potentially opting out of that and renegotiating a new deal with the Warriors that would help both him and the franchise, potentially looking at a deal. I know Marcus Thompson on the episode said a deal around 2 year, $12 million, which would obviously give GP2 $3 more million of guaranteed money than he otherwise wouldn't have, while also helping the franchise in terms of their payroll issues next season. Removing that $9 million and cutting it down to $6 million for next year would obviously go a long way to the Warriors, alleviating those issues. They obviously want to get under the second tax apron first and foremost, and then I don't think they'll get under the luxury tax altogether. But any kind of money they can shave off is going to be pivotal. Slater did also say that if he were to opt in to the $9.1 million player option, then that would probably give a sense that the franchise and Payton's management probably don't see necessarily eye to eye on a renegotiated contract, which could also lead to GP2 being traded as part of salary to match in a potential trade. So that would be interesting, because obviously you've got to balance out. And my real question mark here is, if he gets the sense that he'll be traded, then does he just opt out and take that ability away from the Warriors altogether, and potentially even leave the Warriors and see what he can, explore what he could get on the open market in Frenchie, which would be a bit of a risk, because you've got $9 million he could just opt into there. Does he get any more than 5 or 6? Does he get a multi-year deal on the open market? I question that. And so for him, it's going to be a balance of, hey, I want to be at the Warriors, but if I opt into this, and if we can't renegotiate a new contract and I opt into this, will they just trade me? And if so, does that mean that I should just opt out? And if I opt out, what could I get on the market? Like, these are discussions that will be certainly had, between GP2 and his management in the next few weeks here. So it's going to be fascinating to see. But I think ideally, he's still a valuable player to the Warriors. He's their best perimeter defender. He's still a key part of their rotation when healthy, which is the biggest question mark. Like, he's missed, I think he's played 66 of a possible 164 regular season games in the last 2 years. Like, health is the biggest concern. But Slater spoke about how much he trusts the Warriors medical staff, certainly in comparison to his short stint in Portland, which didn't go overly well at all. And he obviously loves the Warriors. I think he wants to be at the Warriors. There's no doubt about that. But it's just about hashing it out, and the health is a big concern. And if the Warriors can get an upgrade from GP2, a more consistent option, a player who is going to be more available for them, then I think he's got to be looked at in a trade. Like, if you look at, Alex Caruso of the Bulls, who the Warriors obviously love, is he a player where, you can give up GP2 and a first round pick or something for him? Don't know. Bulls might not necessarily go for that, but that's the kind of thing we're talking about in terms of GP2 being a trade candidate. Is there a sign and trade option for someone like a Tobias Harris or something, where he signs a $14 million per year deal over multiple years, and it's like GP2 and Moody for Tobias Harris or something in a sign and trade with Philadelphia? Who knows? That's just another option, throwing it out there. Absolute dream from the Warriors would be Larry Marketing. It's not going to happen, but again, could GP2 be half of the salary to get to Marketing? And then obviously all the future first round picks and young players involved in that as well. So it's certainly going to be fascinating what happens with GP2. And certainly that June 19 date is one to look out for. Next one, perhaps even more interesting, was Kevon Looney. So he's got a team option next year, where he's got an $8 million deal, $3 million of which is guaranteed. June 24 is the date for the Warriors to guarantee the remainder of that contract. Very, 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 very interesting quote from Tim Kawakami, who said, I think the likeliest situation is that he's cut and he makes $3 million from them and he's off looking for another spot, and there will be another spot for him in this league. Teams are going to want him again for a very low number, but they're going to want him. Identified the Denver Nuggets and San Antonio Spurs as potential options for Looney if he's flat out cut by the Warriors and becomes an unrestricted free agent. I was quite shocked by this. I was genuinely shocked, because it's hard. Like, Kevon Looney had a down year. He had a down year. We all know that. But that was coming off a career best year the year before. So he's not that far removed from being a very good player. Like, we are just over 12 months from him being the second best player on the Warriors in a 7-game playoff series. where he absolutely locked down Domantas Sabonis, rebounded absolutely everything, and was potentially the second best player or second most impactful player behind Steph Curry. It's not that far away. And so you look at that, you think of what he provides from an off-court perspective in terms of leadership at the franchise. He's a 3-time champion. He's been there nearly a decade. I would be genuinely shocked if the Warriors said, yeah, we're just going to cut you. Like, we're going to get nothing back. We're just doing this for purely financial reasons. You're gone. Go find another team. They could always bring him back on the minimum, but I don't think that's necessarily going to be. I don't think Looney's necessarily going to go for that because ultimately that would be really disrespectful. It would be. I get it. I get why they would. Again, the financial reasons as I just spoke about with GP2. Every little thing matters. $5 million is quite huge when you're talking about the luxury tax penalties that come into that as well. But that would be, to me, if I was Looney, I'd be totally feel disrespected if this team that I've poured my heart and soul into, I've gone through multiple injuries, I've been a key piece to a championship, I've won 3 NBA championships, I was a key piece to a playoff run just last year, and you're just cutting me. You don't even want me. You don't even want value for me in return. That would shock me. That would be stunning, I think. And I think that was the biggest quote from this podcast. How come we thinking that's the likeliest situation for Loon? I don't know. I just think what's the worst that could happen if you just opt in if you just guarantee the rest of Loon's contract? Because they can get under the second tax apron anyway, based on CP3, based on Klay. They can get under the second tax apron anyway without needing to do this with Loon. I think. So what's the worst outcome here? I guess that's the worst outcome where they find themselves still in the second tax apron or the penalties that come with that. But again, I think they can get under that even by guaranteeing Loon's deal. At worst, you've got a backup center on $8 million, which is not horrific. It's not Kevon Looney was poor last season. $8 million for Kevon Looney next season, though, is not horrific. It's not one of the worst contracts in the league. If you want to dump it to a team, you could probably dump it to a rebuilding team for a second-round pick. Add a second-round pick or something or whatever and get off his contract to a team with cap space or something like that. I don't know. Or you just trade, you could trade him, you could use him, as I just spoke about with GPT, you could use that salary as a piece to go and get a major upgrade. And you could get a really good piece out of it, and that's probably the upside from it. I just think it'd be disrespectful. Be really disrespectful, and I don't get it. I do get it. I do get it for the financial reasons, but it would legitimately shock me. It would legitimately shock me if they just cut Kevon Looney and make him an unrestricted free agent. Yeah, this wouldn't make sense to me. I'd get it, but it just wouldn't make sense. And I find it hard to see them doing that. Just for what, at some point, we're talking about Klay, Klay, the loyalty factor there, Klay's got to take a pay cut, because of, what the Warriors have done for him. Or go the other way and say, the Warriors should overpay for Klay because of what he's meant to the franchise. Well, that should also apply to Loon. And there probably should be some respect there where Loon's had, if you go back to his contract from last season, that was one of the best deals in the league. You're getting a starting center who was having real playoff impact for $7 million or whatever. And if $8 million to a backup center is a bit overs next season, so be it. And he's also just 28 years old. It's not like we're talking about a 35-year-old, albeit maybe he moves like that at times. But he's 28. So I don't think it's that horrific to pay $8 million to a 28-year-old backup center who should be better than what he was last season. I don't know. We'll wait and see on that one. Just a few targets to kind of monitor, some of which were, again, identified and listed in the Warriors Plus Minus podcast. Karl Anthony Towns is someone that has kind of intrigued me since the Timberwolves were obviously eliminated. He had a pretty horrific playoffs in general. Last couple of games were okay, But by that point, the Timberwolves are 3-0 down, and their season was all but done and dusted by that point. So it kind of came a bit too late. Huge contract going forward. We obviously know the ownership issues in Minnesota at the moment and the kind of uncertainty around there, how much they're willing to pay on this team moving forward, because there is a lot of money guaranteed or committed to all their key players. Obviously, Ant, Gobert, Jaden McDaniels, Naz Reid, even Conley even has got a new deal, I think. So there's obviously a lot of money tied up into that team moving forward, and if there's going to be one player they want to move on to alleviate some of that cap issues, then it's going to be Cat, who's 4 years, $221 million or something coming up, which is a huge amount of money, an astronomical amount of money, and as a result, he could be gettable for a price that maybe less than what we think of him or his capacity as a player, where he's still an incredibly talented offensive player. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And he would feel a need for the Warriors in terms of a legitimate second scorer, more shooting in the front court as well. As much as I don't think him and Draymond would get on necessarily at times, I think from a purely on-court fit, I think they kind of massage out each other's flaws a little bit in terms of what Cat can do offensively and what Draymond can do defensively. So there'd certainly should be a good theoretical on-court fit there. I just wonder, I'm watching Cat in these playoffs. Is he consistent enough? Is he good enough to be that genuine second guy on a deep playoff team? I've got serious question marks about that. And if you're going to pay a guy 4 years, $221 million, I want that guy. I want that guy to be a legitimate second bona fide all-star who I know is going to perform game in, game out for me in the playoffs. And Cat's just not done that. And so therefore I question how far a Steph Cat 1-2 combination could take the Warriors moving forward. And if it can't take you anywhere beyond the first round of the playoffs, is that really worth it given the money that you are going to be committing even more moving forward? I just find that difficult to believe. And so as nice as a fit as Cat might be, I just don't think that's an option. I don't think it's an option the Warriors would necessarily explore just because of the financial commitment I speak about. Caruso, again, I just wanted to mention quickly, obviously mentioned him before in reference to GP2. More speculation on him obviously being available. Again, the Warriors had interest at the midseason deadline, obviously turned down. I think the Bulls might have asked for Kuminga, and the Warriors obviously said he was untouchable, particularly for Caruso. But he's going to be of interest again this offseason. 1 year left on his deal. If the Bulls want to extract value out of him, now's the time to do it. Fantastic contract, making just under $10 million or whatever. Theoretically, a great fit at the Warriors. High IQ player, good passer, elite perimeter defender, obviously one of the best in the league, capable ball handler, capable shooter. We saw a bit more of that this season. So does a lot of things, and that's the kind of player the Warriors want. I just think if the Warriors are going to trade for Caruso, that's got to be the second move behind a more substantial trade or other move that happens before that. Because I just think you feel like your one-off season move is, we got Alex Caruso. That's not telling me that you're flying back into championship contention by any means. Are you going to be better? Yes, depending on what happens in free agency with Klay and whatever else. But, let's assume everyone comes back and you just, I don't know, you trade JP2 for Caruso. Are you better? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, for sure. But are you back into title contention? I don't think so. And so I think Caruso would have to be the second move the Warriors make this offseason. I think their priorities should lie around getting a far more impactful player. Like Caruso's an impactful player, don't get me wrong. Winning player, high level role player, but like a role player, again, at the end of the day, not a star, which is what the Warriors, I think, ideally need to get. And what they've reported to be going after, given ESPN's Ramona Shelburne said, they're going big game hunting this offseason. They're looking for a second starter pair with Steph. Could Kyle Kuzma be that guy? He's another guy that was mentioned in the podcast. No, I don't see him. He's not the second best player on a championship team. Would he start on the Warriors? Like, is he better? Like, assuming you trade Andrew Wiggins for him, is Kyle Kuzma better than Andrew Wiggins? Again, like, what happens to perimeter defense in that situation? I don't know. I just don't think he's the guy either. You want to probably be aiming a little bit higher than that. Again, it depends on what kind of you have to give up. And the guys on the podcast were kind of talking about, the Wizards wouldn't necessarily want too much for him, and that their asking price, would certainly be lower than what it was potentially at the mid-season deadline. He's got a really good contract. It's descending over the next 3 seasons. So I don't know. Like, it's not an horrific option by any means. Again, fits the bill of a bit more shooting in the front court, albeit his shooting has been somewhat inconsistent. I do think his percentages would probably go up a little bit, given he had so much of a burden, a lot of contested jumpers in Washington, which is just the state of their franchise kind of thing. So certainly an interesting option, not a perfect one by any means, albeit there's not really too many perfect ones for the Warriors. The buzz name I just want to finish this episode on right now is Jimmy Butler, who obviously sent speculation soaring again even more yesterday when he was an Instagram photo or something of him in the Bay Area. He's the one that's kind of, if it was Kevin Durant at the start of the offseason, it's Jimmy Butler now in terms of that high-end star who the Warriors could potentially get their hands on. Obviously, a lot of talk about potential discomfort at the Heat at the moment. Pat Riley was really publicly critical of Jimmy's kind of trash talking from the sidelines in the first round series against the Celtics. He's the player right now where you got to kind of keep an eye on. If you're the Warriors, Slater has said that the Warriors would certainly be interested in Jimmy Butler were he to become available. I still think it's very unlikely that the Heat make him available this offseason. But again, if the price is right, then Jimmy's certainly a player who you would look at. Obviously got a huge salary for next season, and then is obviously extension eligible at the moment, which is potentially part of the issues between he and the Heat. I did see a 3-team trade kind of floated out there. I can't remember. It was one of my colleagues at Fansided, but I can't remember who it was. Apologies for that. But it was a 3-team trade between the Warriors, the Heat, and the Magic, where it was essentially Wiggins, Moody, CP3, Pods, 3 first-rounders for Jimmy, Cole Anthony, and Caleb Houston, both from Orlando. Would I do that? If you can get Jimmy Butler without giving up Kuminga, I think that intrigues me, because ideally you want to try and get a second star while keeping Kuminga in his upside. Like, ideally, you get a second star, you have Kuminga as kind of your third option offensively, who could explode into your second option. I think that's because you're kind of taking 2 bites at the apple in that scenario. You're getting the second star to pair with Seth, and you're still retaining the hope and the chance that Kuminga becomes, that second star as well, that could even kind of overthrow the player that you've traded in. Like, I think that would be an ideal scenario. But again, can you get that player without giving up Kuminga in a deal? And I think if you don't make that move and you're relying on Kuminga to become that second star for you to lift you back up into playoff contention, that's a huge risk to take. And I think you want, for a franchise who should be prioritizing a 36-year-old Steph Curry in the remainder of his prime, I think you want more certainty than relying on a 21-year-old who's going into his 4th year, who's still vastly inexperienced when it comes to playoff basketball. And so could you get Jimmy Butler without giving up Kuminga? If you could, then I think that certainly interests me. Is 3 first-rounders a bit excessive? Maybe. If we could cut that down to 2, then potentially the Warriors would do that deal. I think Pods would obviously be a big loss for us in that scenario. But if it was to get Jimmy Butler, I don't hate it. I don't hate it. I wouldn't be totally against it in that scenario, because I don't think Pods can become a star in the way that JK potentially can, as despite him being so impactful in his rookie season. Cole Anthony, is he good enough to run a second unit behind Steph and be a backup point guard? Maybe, maybe for 10, 15 minutes a game. That's not horrific. So it's not a horrific deal by any means, but I do think that 3 first-rounders in that deal is probably a bit excessive, particularly when you're giving up Pods as well, who's certainly worth like if he was to be available on the open market, he'd be worth a lottery pick. I'd imagine, like, he's a pick 19 last year. He certainly increased his value from there. Like, I mean, if the Warriors wanted to trade Pods this offseason in this draft, you could probably get a top 10 pick for him quite easily. I would imagine. You might even get a top 6, top 8 pick for Brandon Bajemski based just on what this draft is. And so, again, giving up him and 3 firsts for Jimmy Butler, perhaps a bit excessive. But other than that, I'm going to finish it up there because I need to go take some pain medication. I am really, really sore. So apologize for the delay between episodes, but you can probably understand why, given what I've been through in the last week or so. It's been quite difficult to write, but I've been able to kind of keep up with that thanks to voice dictation, where you just speak to your laptop and it kind of writes for you and gets most of it correct, albeit my accent, can be a bit challenging for the AI or whatever at times. But anyway, hope you guys are going better than I am at the moment. Hopefully I have another episode out soon, particularly if there's any major updates. However, I am going to be going in for surgery, which is probably going to put me off for a couple of days in the next few. So we'll wait and see what happens. Otherwise, hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend, and I'll see you on the next episode.